So this looks like a pretty hopeless situation, but this is actually the start of my comeback. I go all in with 4-3-2, which is pretty good to start with. I immediately make an 8 high hand, which is fortunate, and just have to hope that no one gets something better than that. And Ruemnik had a 9 high, so I win that one too. So I've got 1300, which is better than 300, although I'm still in pretty bad shape. Fortunately, I get 5-4-2 in the big blind, which is a pretty good hand. I'm going to check. If there's a possibility I lose this hand, it might be nice to have the 300 left behind. I think Ruemik really should have bet to put my 300 in, just on the off chance I do lose and get to keep it. But I am improving to a 7 high hand now. And king high is actually good because he just had a pair of 8s. So now I get 6-4-3 on the button, and this is kind of a weakish hand because there's a lot of straight possibilities, but I only have 1700 chips and I only need to beat 2 players, so I don't really have too much time to wait. This seems like the right time to go for it. And UTC draws 4, which is a pretty big sign of weakness to me. So I'm actually going to go for the 9 high instead. But when he stands pat, that makes me think that I actually need to change things up and go for an 8 high hand instead. And it's good for me that I did give up the 9 because we tie and I stay alive. And now I have 7-4 in the big blind, and most of my chips are in there, so this is a hand that I really need to win if I want a chance to survive. I get 8-7-4-3, which seems pretty promising. I'm probably just going to go for the 8-7-4-3. Even though it's a weaker 8 high draw, it's probably my best chance. Rather than trying to go for a 7 high, which is a little bit more unlikely. I do make a 9 high, but I think that's probably not good enough. The mole drew 1, and I feel like someone's going to make 8 high or better, so I need to try for it myself too. Unfortunately, I make a king high, and I lose. So it's fortunate that no one put me all in because I'm left with 800. So now this is most of my chips in the middle. I do have a good starting hand, 8-7-6-3. I just need one more card to make an 8 high hand, and I'm just against one player, so I'm going to go for it. And I make a 9 high, which is ever so slightly better than his hand, and I survive. And now I get 7-6-5-3. It's a little bit of a scary hand because if I pick up the 4, then I make a straight, which is useless to me. So I'm only hoping for a 2 or an 8, but this still seems like the best opportunity for me because I have 4 low cards already, and I don't know if I'll get something better than that in the next 2 hands. So I'm going for it. And I immediately make the 7 high hand, which is extremely lucky. It's the only card that gave me that. And I win again, so I'm still alive, but a little bit healthier now. Now I get 7-5-2, which is a great hand. I'm definitely going to raise this. No luck just yet. I could have bet since I drew less, but I'm going to play it cautious because I just want to keep my tournament alive. I get a 6, which helps. This time I am going to bet because I feel good about my hand, and luckily he just folds, so I take it right away. Now I have 8-5-3, so I get to see a draw for free, which is nice. This time I think I'm going to go for the 9 high because he drew 2. I think if someone's drawing 2 twice, a 9 high is a favorite against that. I do make a 9-8-6-5-3, which looks like it's going to be good a lot of the time. And this time it is good. So even though I usually go for 8 high or 7 high, sometimes the 9 high can be good when it gets towards the end of it and the other player is still drawing. Eight, 5-2. This seems like a decent opportunity to raise. It's a pretty good 8. If it was like 8-7-2 or 8-6-2, I might be more wary. And this time I just take it. And now the very next hand I get something that's playable again. And he folds it. And now I'm no longer in last place. I get another free draw, which is nice. I draw 3, he draws 1. My hand improves significantly. But I'm checking to him because he drew less. I'm definitely not folding to this because my hand is so good. He draws 1 again, even though he bet, which makes me think he's just betting regardless of if his hand's improving or not. So he could still have a hand where he needs to draw 1, even though he's betting here again. So I'm calling. And I make an 8 high hand, which is strong. I don't like the fact that he stood pat, but this hand is just too good to fold. And luckily he was bluffing. So now I've gone from having 300 chips to now 24,000, and I'm officially back in the middle of the pack. I think this hand pretty much plays itself. I managed to get a 7-6-2, which is pretty good, and he just doesn't have that many chips behind, so I'm going to call him down for the rest of this. Now I have a pretty good hand in the small blind. The mole limps, and I think if I had a hand like 8-3-2, I would also limp, but 7-3-2 is strong enough that I want to raise. I don't expect the mole to fold, but I did raise because I wanted to get Amarines out of it. I don't like letting a player see a free draw. We both draw 2, and I didn't improve, so I'm going to check and draw again. And actually making a 9 high hand is a slight favorite against him drawing 1 on the second draw. If I had a 10 high, then I would discard the 10, but I'm going to keep the 9 and bet it. I want to bet with all the hands that I'm standing pat with, so it's not obvious I have a 9 high, which is one of the weaker ones. And now that I have the 9 high, I don't expect him to call with much worse, so I'm checking it, and I have the best hand. Okay, so this time we both draw 2. I didn't improve, so I'm going to check and try again. I get a 7, which is nice, but he drew less, so I'm going to check again. I can call this, I'm pretty sure, because even if he made his hand, I could still possibly win with a 3, 5, or 8, which is a lot of outs. If he didn't make a hand, then I might actually be a favorite right now. And now I get a pair of 4s, and he draws 1 as well. I think if I'd paired the 6 or the 7, I would bluff at this, because I'm generally bluffing with my worst hands. But because the pot was so big, I feel like I can't be bluffing too much, because he's very incentivized to call 3,600 for 17,000. In this case, I think if I had 9, 7, 6, 5, 3, I would stand pat, but anything worse than that, I think it's better to try and improve. So I am going to discard the jack. And when he discards 2, I expect to have the better hand, but I don't expect him to call with much worse than 10 high, so I check it and take it down. This is the last hand before the final table. I've got a pretty good starting hand, and I think this hand pretty much plays itself. And now we're at the final table. So I start off with 7-2 in the big blind. Even though I only have 2 low cards, this is actually a little bit better because the 2 and the 7 are the 2 best cards you can get in this game. Because it's possible you can make a 7 high hand, but the 7 and 2 are spaced far enough apart that it's impossible to make a straight. So the 7 and the 2 are the best, and I'm going to call just 2,000 to see the first draw. I also didn't expect the mole or Vern to make it 6k because they both limped in. So I draw and I miss. But luckily this is going to check all the way through, so I'll get another chance. And this time I make 9, 8, 7, 4, 2. And and mooks are Beck bets, and I actually don't really like this. Even though I have 4 cards to an 8, it's a pretty weak 8 with the 8-7. I would probably lose against most other 8 high hands. I also noticed that Vern only drew 1, and I didn't know if he was going to raise it up again. It would be kind of a disaster if I called and then someone else raised, so now I'm investing 8,000 more into the pot instead of just 4,000 with a weak draw. Now I have 6-5-4-3-2, which is actually a pretty good hand. Even though I have a straight, I can drop the 6, and I just need one more card for a 7 or an 8 high. So I'm going to put in a 3-bet. That's what I usually like to do when I have 4 low cards to start with, and I get 2 people to come along. And I make the 8 high already, which is nice. And it's the strongest possible 8 high that I could get. I think they call that an 8 perfect, so I'm going to play it aggressively. And even though I'm getting really low on chips, I could definitely see him calling with a worse 8 high, so I'm definitely going to keep betting. And I get a big pot. And now there are 5 left, and this is where things start to take a turn for me, where I think I just go on to lose the rest of my chips from here on out. This time I only have a 3. Not very good. Definitely going to check even though my hand improved. 8-3-2 is a nice improvement though. There are 3 people in the pot, and one of them drew 1, so I'm still going to try and go for 8 high. And improved to a pair of 2s, which isn't bad enough that I want to bluff it, but is not strong enough to win either. I think I would have bluffed if I had made something worse, like a pair of 8s or a pair of 5s. I get 7-6-2, which is a good hand. Definitely going to raise this one. Mooksarbek raises, and I just have to call. I'm getting an extremely good price. We all draw 2 and he bets, and again I'm getting an extremely good price. Now I make an 8-7-6-2, which is a pretty weak 8 high draw. I'm losing against almost any other 8 high hand with the 8-7-6. And there are 3 people in the hand, so I think I'm going to let this one go. I think this hand kind of plays itself too. I've got 6-4 to start, which isn't great, but there's some potential. I do not improve. I make 6-4-2. However, now the bets are really big with respect to the pot, so I think I have to let this one go. There's also the possibility that SGA could have raised, and I still need 2 more cards to make my hand, so I think I am happy letting that one go. Now I have 3-2 in the small blind. Normally I wouldn't play this, but I know the mole hasn't been raising a lot, even when he does play hands, so I feel like I'll get to see a cheap draw, which I do. I get 8-7-3-2, which is kind of a weaker 8-high draw. And now the bets are still big with respect to the pot, so I think I have to let this go too. I just can't call with only 2 low cards. This is a pretty strong 8 draw, and there's only one guy behind me, so I'm raising it. I'm actually just going to draw 1 this time. When he draws 3 cards, I feel like a 9 is actually pretty good. And now this is all of it. He draws 3 again, and I think it's better to go for a 9 than stick with the 10. He draws 2, and actually when someone draws 2 cards on the third draw, Queen High is actually a slight favorite to win against that. So I'm going to stand pat here. Unfortunately, he did make his draw, so that's the end of it for me, but I'm still happy with the decision I made. Thanks for watching this video, if you made it this far. This shows that even if you lose most of your chips in a poker tournament, there's always the possibility that you can make a comeback. Hope you enjoyed seeing something a little different from Texas Hold'em.